This episode includes discussion of child sexual abuse material, and online child exploitation. These are difficult but necessary topics for us parents to understand in order to protect our kids. Please listen with care. On episode 2 of The Heat Is On, we continue our conversation about Apple. On our last episode, we examined the ways that Apple has failed to protect our kids and how the company profits from resisting change.
I don't think they're an evil company. I don't think their business model requires hurting children. But they own that app store, and they are not running it safely for children.
I believe parents should not trust the app store and its ratings.
These criminals have gotten smart, and very early on in the conversation, they will ask their target for their iMessage, their phone number.
Meta's reporting in the tens of millions, Google's reporting in the millions, X's had been reporting in the millions, Microsoft, all these companies, and then it gets to Apple, 252 reports. When you think about all the people using phones, all the images and videos going around on Apple devices, they're saying 252 times as opposed to Meta's 16 million. It's pretty clear that they're just not doing anything. It's not that it's not there.
In this episode, we discuss the steps that Apple could take to make their products safer and how we as parents can pressure them to do the right thing. So we are now through talking about the App Store through iMessage and through iCloud. And some of the issues that occur there are partly a consequence of the privacy features that are so important to Apple. Like it's their number one marketing tactic is to talk about their privacy. And so that begs the question, can privacy and child safety live in the same device that's used by the child, which is pretty important. Like if we're going to give our children Apple devices, it has to be safe. And so I'm going to play a note from Chris McKenna, and then I would love to discuss.
I believe that privacy and protection can live in the same space. Those are not mutually exclusive ideas. I think big tech and the opposition want us to believe that those two things can't live in the same space. But the technology exists without getting into a lot of details, even in a fully end-to-end encrypted environment. There is technology that at the local level or other prompts or other ideas that are out there that could still discern whether or not there was a pattern of illegal behavior in the content that's being shared in that environment so that something could be done about it. So privacy is, yes, we want it, but it's too often used as an excuse for saying no to a lot of other things that could protect children, and that's the problem. They're not mutually exclusive.
I think Apple at its core does hold a core value of privacy, and it's interesting because if you look on their website, they list their core values, and privacy is one of them, but safety is not.
Okay.
I do believe that the products are designed with adults in mind.
Right.
And I think from that perspective, it is incredibly important that your data is private, that people cannot access it, and Apple has held the line on certain parts of it not being bought and sold. Mm-hmm. People's data they definitely, they live that value, I guess, is what I would say. What has happened beyond that is they've realized it is a great excuse or way to get out of doing all these other things that would create child safety. And then they say that they can't do the child safety things because of privacy. So as Chris talks about, that Apple and others have purposely pitted those things against each other so that it's just another reason why they can't do all this stuff. Ironically, if they actually led on how to hold those two things together, they would be the company that most people would trust to do it, right? They're not going to let your kids' data get out there. They're not going to do all these things, and they're also going to actually protect them from dangerous things on their platform. But instead, they double down on this and really think about the next time you see one of their billboards. 9 times out of 10, other than the big shot on an iPhone campaign, it's mostly now privacy, 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 and they're trying to drill that into you as a consumer so that you're well, that's the most important part of this whole Apple thing. And then when us advocates and others come and say, well, we also need to do this thing, we are now thinking those are in conflict.
So they're pushing back on requests for safety with, well, we can't breach people's privacy, when in reality, we can achieve both privacy and safety, especially when it comes to child users.
Yeah, another really important idea to introduce here is, what about the privacy of the victims in the images and videos?
Right?
The kids who were sexually abused, and now their images and videos are like going viral all over the internet, and then they're stored and shared out of iCloud. What about their privacy? Like, should they have a right to be able to go to Apple and say, I want you to take down the images and videos of my abuse from other people's iClouds?
So they're further prioritizing the privacy of criminals over the privacy of victims.
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to move to a section where we talk about what Apple could actually do to protect children. Some of our experts are of the mind that Apple could actually fix this whole thing instead of having to go to every single app and have them implement, child safety features. So let's hear from Jonathan Haidt on this.
But Apple is the best situated company to solve the problem of kids online. And the reason is this. Having every website do it is very difficult. That's what Australia is going to do. And it's going to work, but it's not going to work perfectly. It's going to be all kinds of mistakes at the margins. What raises zero privacy issues, zero, is device-based verification. So let's just look at the case of me as a parent. If I want to keep my kids away from Snapchat, Instagram, porn, gambling, sports betting, if I want to keep my kids away from those things, there's no way to do it unless you keep them away from the entire internet. But suppose I want my kids to not get to certain sites. I could choose to buy my kids a special kids phone. It could be marked either hardware, or there could be a way to do it software where the kids couldn't change it. But when we set up an account for our kids, we do put in their age. And if I, as a parent, put in that my kid is 10, and that is then linked across all their devices, my kid can't change that, boom, problem solved.
A kid phone by Apple. I mean, we have these other companies, Bark, Trimmy, Pinwheel, Gab, making child-safe phones from the ground up, and they do a really responsible job. So why wouldn't Apple want to compete in that market and actually give us another option and do it well?
I really think John's concept of the phone being able to sort of like own that I belong to a 10-year-old, I belong to a 12-year-old, and that setting the base standard of what the phone can do or not do would be tremendously helpful and would really like change the game, because it would provide a level of safety so much like further down the chain from like the apps and like the internet and all the things that he described. And so what he also means by the device side not raising the privacy concerns is because that is in a loop. It's when something finally comes onto the device or before it goes off the device, so you're not sending in any information in or out. Some of the challenges with like the App Store verification stuff is who is going to verify on what end, and therefore what data do they have. But this way you could be basically like stopping it before it starts.
So there's discussion about verifying kids' ages either within the App Store, so that everything that they can download, so Apple has to do it, and then everything Apple allows you to download is approved for your age. Or do the actual apps have to do it each and every time? And then what are you uploading to like verify your age? Yeah. Is that safe and private? But how about just having the device be a kid-safe experience for that age level?
Yeah.
That's further down the chain. I love that idea. Okay, so next, how do we get Apple to protect our kids within the App Store, the actual apps that they download? And we have a note from Chris McKenna on this. Let's listen in.
Maybe the top thing that the App Store, Apple's App Store, could do, they wouldn't like this very much, but I believe that the App Store should have an independent review process of some kind. There should be some kind of independent accountability that is reviewing these apps so that parents can be assured that somebody without the incentive to answer the way in which creates the least amount of friction is actually accurately assigning these ratings. It's the fact that there is no accountability for inaccurate ratings, and there's also no real reporting mechanism for parents when something is grossly misrepresented in the App Store. There's very little that parents can do in order to go to that third party or to go to that independent agency to say, hey, there's something wrong here, right? There's a problem with this app being rated in this way. It says this in its description. This is what's happening. My child in a 4+ gaming app was served this pop-up ad that took them to pornography, right? That's a problem.
So we need someone outside of the people who are profiting from the app download to be reviewing the apps, right?
Well, also somebody who knows kids' development.
Right.
Like, oh, this would be a positive or negative environment to be involved in.
And I like the option too for parents to like report the app as inappropriate.
There is a really interesting effort happening with Dr. Brian Levine at UMass where they stood up their own site called App Danger Project, and they've accumulated a bunch of people's reviews of apps saying how dangerous they are. Have I not showed you this?
No.
Oh yeah, you'd have a field day there. But that's because no one else is doing that. And then all of a sudden you'll see people complaining like, I went on this app and it was all like people trading child sexual abuse content. So those are the it's clearly like not an easy system to be able to report that to Apple.
Yeah, and if Apple's not actually paying attention to the reviewers' comments and making they should also be making adjustments based off of that feedback. Okay, now we're going to talk about what Apple could do regarding iMessage. Paul Raphael is going to talk a little bit more about the reporting feature.
The first thing Apple can do to protect children from sextortion threats is to implement a robust in-app reporting system. Being able to report threatening messages, being able to report criminal activity within iMessage, making it easy for those victims to report. We're seeing millions of reports coming in from Google, from Instagram, from all the other big tech firms, but we're only seeing 250 cases a year coming from Apple. It's not that there's less crimes happening on Apple, it's that those victims don't have a way to report it.
Apple needs to add a reporting system within iMessage so children can ask for help when they need it.
Okay, let's talk about iMessage and what Apple can do. So Apple actually has already felt the squeeze on this. Remember, as we were talking about earlier, they were such the outlier on not allowing for kids to report. Like, again, that is such a basic user-forward thing to offer. Like, if you're in an environment and something's bad, you can report it here. To their credit, they even recognize now this is so out of date. And there's also been pressure put on them by the Australian government, by other organizations. So they did roll out user reporting for minors in Australia about a year ago.
Okay.
So we're about a year into that, but it's not available to U.S. teens yet. And they did say they're going to roll it out globally, but like we've seen no movement on it. So this is an example of where like we need to keep pressuring them to do that. And you can actually go on our website, heatinitiative.org, and sign an email that goes to like the top 20 leaders at Apple saying that you want them to like move forward with this implementation.
Great, and we'll put that in the episode notes so people can do that right now. When it comes to iCloud, Apple iCloud, we talked a lot about how they can proactively detect CSAM, known CSAM, and not be reactive about it, and that they're not doing that. Obviously, that's something that they could do to protect victims and children. Is there anything else around iCloud that you would ask them to do?
I want Apple to meet with victims of child sexual abuse material, so survivors of these images and videos, and hear from them what they want them to do. And having worked with some of those people, I know that yes, detection of known child sexual abuse material is like our number one ask right now. Again, they had already designed a whole solution to be rolled out, like it was already built. So you have to imagine that like those pathways are already there. Like it shouldn't be that hard to restart it and say like this is the path we're going to go down, and we're really just waiting for them to make like the humane choice here.
To bring this back to parents who are watching and listening, I hear from so many parents that they struggle with the Apple screen time. We've already talked about that. So just if Apple could make it easier to use, make it more intuitive, make those parental controls so that kids can't bypass them in like 3 minutes with a YouTube tutorial. Like there's a lot of improvement to be had around screen time. Until these and many other things are done, like Apple should truly stop marketing their products as safe for children, because they're not.
I think it's interesting that there was this era within Apple where they were sort of a few years ago, like 2018, 2017, where they were bringing up this idea of, like, I think it's probably because they also knew how addictive the phone was, that they realized eventually there's going to be this backlash. And also maybe they genuinely didn't realize how addictive they were going to be. Who knows? But Tim Cook was quoted at a Fast Company event talking about something to the effect of, like, if you're looking down at your phone more than you're looking in people's faces, you're not doing the right thing. And if you think about that and then having the knowledge that there are millions of kids that have your product who could be doing that because of how addictive it is, those are two things that don't go together. And, like, that's why I'm so confused why you wouldn't come out and say more proactively that the phone is not, even if you don't say it's unsafe for kids, which we know that unfortunately it is, like, it has some big loopholes that make it unsafe. You could even just say we don't recommend it for kids under 16, 17.
You just think about all the little addictive game apps that the kids play and how they just can't stop. And then they're being promoted ads for other ones. And I mean, it's built to keep a kid on there as long as possible. Think about the iPads. Like, that's what it's built for. You can't get your kid off.
The cognitive development side of this, like, it's hard to imagine that they haven't thought about the effect that their products are having on generations of children. And why would you not want to intervene more?
Well, a through line in all of these episodes is these tech CEOs don't seem to care about our children. Like, they'll protect their own kids from the dangers of their products, but they don't seem to care about our kids. So our goal as a movement, as all parents, should be, how do we get Apple to make these changes that protect our children? And we talked about a major lawsuit from CSAM victims against Apple. I advocate for as many lawsuits as possible. It's a great way to force change. But also another way is laws. So requiring the company to make safer choices through passing laws on a state level or the federal level. We're going to hear quickly from Paul Raphael on this.
Well, right now, anything is better than nothing. And we see that big tech is unable to police themselves to the detriment of safety. And so right now, one of the biggest issues is the fact that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act basically immunizes large tech platforms for any criminal activity that happens on their platform. They cannot be held liable for it. And that just doesn't make sense. If you're a business owner of a casino or a large resort or, any physical location, if there's criminal activity happening on your property, you're responsible for preventing it, stopping it, making sure it doesn't come back. That responsibility just doesn't exist when it comes to tech platforms.
So maybe what parents don't realize is there was a law passed in the late 90s that basically immunizes these tech companies from liability when something bad happens on their platform. There's a lot of other details underneath that, but I think that's what we need to understand is we need some kind of reform or sunsetting of that law so that we can, if our children are harmed on these platforms, we can sue and that can be sussed out in court, right?
Yeah. I think that the lawsuits in particular, both around child sexual abuse in iCloud and also the App Store are going to be hopefully groundbreaking because both of those are actually slightly different than what Section 230 would apply to potentially. So the App Store is more like an online marketplace where you are like selling a product. And the question is like, is it safe or not? Are you promising things that you can't keep? For instance, if you're saying apps we love from a place we can trust, so then a parent trusts you and lets their kid download it and then their kid dies or is seriously harmed, is that false advertising? So that's a slightly different way in, and one of the reasons why the lawsuits have legs. And then on the law front, both states and at the federal level, there's been tremendous work happening to pass laws that look at what the device side of this, ecosystem could do to better protect kids, what the app stores should have to do to better protect kids. So in the end, while we were just saying like, oh, Apple could do this, they could do this, the device could signal to everybody I belong to a 12-year-old. Like, whether they do that or not, it may be dependent on whether we all can pass laws that say they have to, because one of the things that we know is that doing it voluntarily is not something we can count on.
Yeah. And when there are laws proposed in your state or federally, it really means a lot when you, as a citizen of that state or this country, let your lawmaker know that you support that bill. So that's something that we're going to be communicating with listeners about, is like, there's an opportunity for us all to contact our lawmakers and get this pushed through, because kids will benefit from it, right?
Yeah, and our colleague Shelby Knox at Parents Together has been talking a lot about this, that she was saying, and this came from legislative offices, like getting 3 to 5 personal calls or emails from constituents can literally mean the difference between it like getting on the agenda in front of the member or the senator or the state senator of like, this really matters. Like, that's so few. So this is where like making your voice heard really, really counts.
And you don't have to know anything at this point. Just like join our email list and we will communicate with you and educate everybody on what these specific bills are. And imagine if we can get 100 or 1,000 people contacting our lawmakers. Like, we could make a big difference in what laws are passed that can protect our kids.
The reality is that we are going to have to like turn up the heat and show that we really care about this and reach out to lawmakers if we want to see these changes happen. But with a company as powerful as Apple, sometimes I think that laws changing will be one of the only ways that we actually get to see real change at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the reason why we have to be so loud is they're playing like a dirty game here. Like, Apple is spending millions of dollars every year lobbying against any of these online safety bills. They spent like $10 million in 2022. I found an example, allegedly, of tech lobbyists in Louisiana offering to invest in Louisiana's education system if the App Store legislation was dropped. And so they're making like these dirty deals, and we have to be above them and ahead of them and louder than them when it comes to what we want to protect our kids.
Well, there was a really well reported on Wall Street Journal article about Tim Cook personally calling Governor Abbott in Texas, trying to get them to not pass the App Store Accountability Act because it would require Apple to have to do age verification. And then all of a sudden that is a big bear on them of something they have to do, which they don't want to do. So they're like, oh, the fact that he personally called him to ask him to strike down something that would actively help protect kids is like really upsetting.
Yeah. And so we need parent pressure on the legislative side, but also it's really effective to put public pressure on these companies, right? Sarah knows this better than anyone. That's what they're doing at Heat Initiative. And tell us about some of the public pressure and events you guys have held, kind of what you did and why. And there's a lot you guys have done when it comes to Apple.
Yeah, I mean, I think people often ask us too, like, why did you pick Apple first? And we did so because we felt like it was the mix of how egregious their negligence is. Like we were just talking about the child sexual abuse images and videos conversation, paired with the fact that like nobody was talking about them being part of the problem. All the focus was on social media. None of it was on Apple and what role they played. And so we started like showing up in front of the stores and talking about it with survivors and projecting messages onto stores and doing protests in front of stores during the holiday time, which is like one of their busiest times. We've been to their HQ so many times. There is now a free speech zone, which is like where they want us to stand, which we never do. But thank you for putting that sign there. We really enjoy it. Part of this is showing up and showing up again and showing that they're real people behind it. Yeah. Because again, in 2021, when they walked the solution back, one of their arguments was like, nobody wants this. Like nobody wants us to move forward with this solution. You know, they had been attacked by some of these like hardcore privacy hawk like people on like Twitter, and instead of holding the line and saying no, we stand by our decision, this is a principle that we have, they kind of folded. And part of their argument though was like, where are all the parents demanding this? And so we have helped build the army of people demanding this to show them like we can show up in person and we really care about this. There's also a great commercial that we made where Apple rots in real time, and it's overlaid with survivor voices talking about how Apple doesn't take their imagery down.
I was 3 months old when it started.
I was 6 years old.
They said, don't tell anyone.
I needed help.
They took pictures and videos.
The images of me have been found over 36,000 times.
They're on iCloud now.
I just want them gone. I think about the pictures and the videos a lot.
The abusers who watch them,
Save them.
Or share them on iCloud.
Apple could help us,
But they don't.
We played that commercial during the NFC Championship in 2024 in the Bay Area. And so a lot of Apple employees would have seen that. And part of that is to spark a conversation inside Apple. Like, look, we know that there are employees inside Apple who wanted these solutions and disagree with the decision to not move forward with it. And so we want to empower them too with the evidence that there are people out there demanding for these changes and that this would actually be a net positive thing for their consumers.
And is there like research around this? Because I'll have friends ask me like, well, what does protesting actually do? Like, that's not gonna, they're just gonna think you're crazy people out there yelling. Like, they're not gonna listen to you. So does it actually work in getting them to change things?
Showing up in person shows them that there are real people behind this. You know, I mentioned when we were first shooting our trailer, right? They were like, no, people don't want this change. So like us showing up in person and saying like, no, it's us, we want this change, it becomes harder and harder to ignore. And I think we have to ground ourselves in the fact that this is a beginning of a movement, and it's going to look like a lot of past movements and drawing on past movements where, and we say this a lot when we do these direct actions, which is going and peacefully demonstrating, but like with a powerful message. And it's hard to stand there and you feel awkward because it's like you'd much rather be home doing something else, right? Because it's not easy to do. And yet the awkwardness is not created because of us, because we're weird. The awkwardness is created because the oppressor, in this instance, Apple or these big companies, are making really unjust and unsafe and just bad decisions for kids. And they're hoping they can get away with it. Mm-hmm. And they're hoping everyone will continue to ignore it. So they're creating the unease and the uncomfortability, not us, by standing up for what's right in that moment. And I think that has been like a tenet that so many of us have like held on to. And we're doing it for our kids and for these survivors because it really is the right thing to do. And I genuinely believe that no matter what your political inclination is, everyone agrees on one thing. It's like the last bipartisan issue that we want our children to grow up happy and healthy and safe. And right now we are fighting an adversary, which is big tech, that does not want those things. And we have to rise up and fight back.
And it was so meaningful for me to bring my 9-year-old to the last Apple event in New York City and sit next to her while she made a sign saying, I don't want this, off of like the iPhone thing, and like watching her stand in front of that store and like see Tim Cook and like with this beautiful choir singing and people crying because they've lost their children. And it's just like, there's nothing more important than this. And if it's uncomfortable, that's okay. Because if we're not willing to do that for our kids, I don't know what we're doing. Okay, so to come back to like hope and action and what parents can do right now, how can parents help in this moment? Number one, we've talked about it already, sign up for our email list. We will send you opportunities as they come up to show up in person, online, spread the word. Number two,
we really need your help in talking to other people about what you've listened to today, because as we find, like, not everybody knows about it, and actually very few people still know about this, especially with Apple. There's very little awareness that they're even involved in this child safety fight and that they're actively like pushing back against things that would really, really help protect kids. Because we know they're such a beloved brand and people are like, well, it can't be that bad. And so helping repeat some of the things that you heard today, especially to parents who are making decisions about whether to buy their phone for like their oldest kid now, delay. Like, it is not from our perspective, it is not safe to own an iPhone, especially if you're a younger teen.
And it can be so hard, like when another family, say I see them and all their kids have iPhones, like how do you bring that up without being super judgmental? I think we're at a time where it's okay to be like, I'm going to send you a podcast episode about Apple. I just want you to be aware that this is going on. Period. Send it, let them get educated and then make their own choices. And the last thing, like Sarah said, like, vote with your wallet around this. Like, make safer choices when it comes to your tech purchases. Obviously, delay use of smartphones for kids. But when it comes to that time where you want to give your child a device, please consider a child-safe device, like the ones we mentioned, Bark, TrueMe, Pinwheel, and Gab. They're all great companies doing great things, making safe devices for kids, unlike Apple, which was built for adults. And all the reasons that we talked about today, not the safest choice for your child.
And the landlines making a comeback.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do with all our friend group is we're all going to get the landlines and then have like the piece of paper by the phone with all the friends' phone numbers so they can call each other.
I just want to say thank you for hanging in there on this one. Like, there's so much information that we want to get across in these episodes, and I know it's a lot. And if you have questions about any of it, let us know. I know some of it is really heavy, so also thank you for getting through that and being open to those, hearing about those hard things, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a great segue into like some of the discomfort that we can feel in talking about like things that are really, really hard to talk about, like child sexual abuse. And something that a colleague said to me as I was learning more and more about this issue too is who suffers too when we aren't willing to talk about those things are the kids that are experiencing it, not all of us sort of adults around them, because we just want to like keep going forward in our own life and not have to think about it. And so pausing and stopping to think about it is so important. And it also reminds me about, like you were asking, what do we sort of tap into at the HEAT Initiative when we take these direct actions and show up in person and participate in peaceful demonstration. And we are learning from a long history of activists who have done this on lots of different issues.
Thank you for tuning in to The Heat Is On. This is an investigative series from Scrolling to Death and the HEAT Initiative.
Next episode, we are turning the heat up on Snapchat.
I'm really looking forward to this one. We have a lot of great interviews and experts that are coming. And until then, stay loud, stay fired up, stay courageous around this topic. We are never going to stop fighting for our kids, and we're going to do it together. On the next episode of The Heat Is On.
What we're going to talk about today is a company that was founded by 3 Stanford frat boys. One of these guys comes in and says, man, wouldn't it be great if we could send stuff, like sex pics with co-eds, right? Wouldn't it be great if we could send stuff out and make it disappear so it doesn't come back to us?
Yeah, 10,000 cases a month, it's shocking, but I don't think that represents even close to the real number. The data that we have seen come out from Snapchat, like 65% of Gen Z being targeted in sextortion schemes.
Snapchat is harming children at an industrial scale. This is not just a few hundred victims, a few thousand. This is not even a few million victims. This is an industrial scale.
Thank you for listening to our conversation about Apple. In our next episode, Sarah and I investigate Snapchat, including the company's origins, how Snap's platform facilitates underage drug use, sextortion, and cyberbullying, and how Snap uses intentionally addictive design to keep children on their platform. All of that on the next episode of The Heat Is On.